you have anybody ready to go for us?
Oh, we've got trouble. Trouble. Yeah. Returning to us is a SecX alumni and a friend of mine and a regular in the Atheist Community of Discord. We have Miss Stephanie Helms. Stephanie, what is on your mind today? Welcome to the
Nate.
show. Hey.
Well, I was, obviously this is a rather interesting topic. It's been 24 years since I went through this whole process. And let me tell you, 24 years ago, it was a little bit more difficult in many jurisdictions, at least in the United States. For instance, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, to change your birth certificate, you needed to have a certification from your surgeon that you had, in fact, undergone sex reassignment surgery, as we called it back then. Now it's often referred to as genital reconstruction surgery. The state of Maine required for a driver's license similar documentation. For changing your name, though, changing your name in Maine is really pretty easy. You just sort of go ahead and say you're not doing it for, you certify to the probate court that you're not doing it for nefarious reasons, and they go ahead and say, yeah, okay. And they ask you, how come? And you just say, well, 'cause, and I'm not doing it to defraud anybody. But it is a pain in the ass. I mean, all of these things were a pain in the ass, and they were serious pain in the ass for obvious reasons. The degree of medical intervention required to get some of these adjustments done. And as Phoebe said, it's incredibly inconvenient before you get this documentation, because it just puts you in awkward situations socially, like going out for dinner or doing this or that or any of that stuff. So it's better these days in some respects because the laws have changed in a lot of jurisdictions. On the other hand, though, I think that it was easier in some respects back in the Stone Age because there wasn't anywhere near as much public social pushback from the culture right now. I mean, right now, as you've alluded to, things are the trans panic is in effect the way the gay panic was in the
real.
80s. So what we're seeing is this double-edged sword of visibility. Back 24 years ago, you didn't qualify as far as the medical establishment were concerned for trans-affirming care unless your goal was to, quote unquote, pass. That was part of the medical establishment's saying. Now that requirement is not quite the same. There's still requirements for living in the role of your gender. In other words, living, quote unquote, full time. But the notion of passing is not the same as it was then, for just simply taking the steps to deal with whatever gender dysphoria you might have. So it's been interesting over the years to see how things have improved yet gotten worse at the same time for trans people in society.
Yeah, Stephanie, I don't know if this is a fair question at all, but let me just put it in front of you and let you answer it how you care to. In some ways, do you feel like being a trans person was easier 10, 20 years ago when things were a little bit more under the radar? I mean, certainly there were, shitty jokes in every sitcom. There were, so many things to be upset about, and there was much less visibility, much less opportunity in a lot of ways, but also nobody was angry. There wasn't like such a concerted effort to direct so much vitriol towards that particular group of folks. How has that like change been for you?
Oh, I think there are more positive role models for trans people these days in the media, but still, it was the portrayals of Jerry Springer and that sort of thing were
sure.
Don't even remind
no doubt.
me.
No.
Oh, that's
horribly
show.
annoying. Horribly annoying, and the stereotype of the trans person. And I'm going to be honest here. The bigger problem in all of this is, or I don't know, bigger, but I think there's a fair amount of misogyny that goes along with, particularly the male to female experience. Like,
Sure.
There's the, wait a minute, you are the default. Why would you want to change that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I say, I've had a lot of trans men say that there's a lot of misandry as well.
There is a fair amount of misandry involved in it, but it's I don't know. I've had more difficulty with misogyny than I have with transphobia in my experience, to be honest. So I don't know. Was it easier? Well, it was after a fashion. It was easier to pass.
Right.
But as somebody once said, passing is like you're still in the closet, but it has better clothes. And in some regards, that's bizarre, because you're always checking yourself. Do I? Can
Sure.
I? Am I? Et cetera and so forth. And that's a bit of a psychological burden to carry. Once you stop giving a shit, then it becomes a great deal easier to like, well, I don't care, like, think what you want. I mean, the one of the things that you mentioned Caitlyn Jenner. Caitlyn Jenner in 2016 competed in a women's pro-am tournament, right? And there was
a golf tournament, right?
New York Daily News, right? All about that. Well, just a couple of days ago, our dear Caitlyn decided to pen an op-ed in some publication or other about how trans girls shouldn't be allowed to compete in this trans kids
Sure.
in athletics thing.
Yeah.
So it's like good for me, but not for thee. So it's there's the illusion of some sort of unified front. The trans agenda is a complete illusion. I mean, I think trans people's decisions are intensely personal. They're not social. The only agenda they have is for themselves to feel comfortable in their skin. This is why they're doing it. They're not doing it for advantage, whether in athletics or in life. I mean, there's
very little motivation for that right now in this culture, in this world.
The burdens that people undertake to make themselves more comfortable are who would do it? I mean, it was not on my list either during transition or before to transition to win a pickle dish at a sailing regatta. I mean, that's not why anyone does this.
Yeah.
And this is kind of thing, and I'm sort of in the midst of having to deal with some of this stuff within my sport, and it's funny. I kept getting these emails from this guy that I'd known for ages and always thought to be a good friend, but it's sort of a right wing Delta Bravo, and and he kept sending me all this stuff about the danger to women's sport for trans women, and it occurred to me that, holy shit, this guy doesn't realize that he's sending all this crap to a trans woman.
Wow. Stephanie, I know
these weird things.
That is wild. Can you talk a little bit? I know you were telling me that you are on a panel for American Sailing as to how to integrate trans folks into the actual competitions. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about that? Did we lose Stephanie?
Yeah, we seem to.
When we got to the good part.
Yeah, well, I'll just take a moment to say, Stephanie mentioned better and more role models for trans folks as being like one of the few bright spots in change. And I guess I just want to take a moment and thank her for being a role model for for so many people in our community, specific to the Atheist Community of Austin and everything else.